Hello again, I'm Larry Hamilton and welcome to my YouTube painting channel. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to do a watercolor painting that I have created from a photograph that a friend of mine has taken in Montana. He has a cousin who lives in Sula, Montana, and he has a cabin that's sort of on the river. I have a photograph down here which I will overlay a tight shot of when I edit the video, and then I have also taken the time to lay out a sort of value mass planning where I try to figure out what values I want in this painting. So I have a photograph that I've photoshopped a layer over the top of the photograph to give me some idea of how to make the values get into about three categories: dark value, a mid value, and a light value. So today in this painting I want to have the sky to be relatively dark, not black, but certainly darker than some of the other parts of the painting. The middle ground here will be in a mid value, and then the water, the stream that's here, will be in a light value. So we're using paper that's by Arches. It's a quarter sheet of paper, which is about 15 by 11, and it's 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. And I have a sketch here that you can see. I'll zoom in to get as tight as I can. I don't want to cut off the edges, but I want you to see the sketch. So it's just a cabin that's kind of nestled in some nice trees along the woods, along this stream in Montana, and with some small mountains in the background, no large mountains. We're using Sterling Edwards brushes. We're using My Merry Blue paints. And I will quickly go over the paints for you one time here. They will be on the intro to this video, but I'll go over them very quickly one time here. We have neutral tint here. It's sort of like a Payne's gray. We have cyan blue, ultramarine blue. We have ultraviolet, crimson lake, which is similar to alizarin crimson. Have garnet lake, which is a sort of a purplish color. Cad red. Have burnt sienna, raw sienna, yellow ochre over here, have cupric green here in this far corner, golden lake, which is very similar to raw sienna but has a little bit different, a little more brown in it, I believe, limon yellow, which is yellow with green in it, and we have primary yellow, which is close to a cad yellow. On the inside row I have burnt umber, I have sap green, I have Avignon orange, have primary red magenta, and still to grain brown, a very beautiful brown color that we'll use some in the trees here. So that's the paints. The brushes are the standard brushes that Sterling Edwards sells, and you may look him up on his website and see some of his paintings and some of his materials which I use. The paints are, as I said, My Merry Blue, which are very transparent Italian watercolor paint, and they're very good for professional and semi-professional artists. So let's get going on this thing. I want to start by wetting the top of the paper, so I'm using my big old 1-inch brush here to just get some clear water. And I'm going to just wet the area for the sky down to the tops of the mountains. And as you may see, I'm going to get some running. I'm painting vertically. Most watercolorists paint in a horizontal plane so they don't end up with a lot of runs like this, but I cannot adequately video this if I paint horizontally because I don't have the infrastructure overhead to put a camera overhead, so I do it vertically. It takes me a little more effort to do it, but I think it's better for the viewer because I can show you the painting vertically and I can show you the palette. I will overlay the palette on this painting as well. And if we get a few runs, it's no problem. We can always clean them up with our paper towel here and soak them up with the paper towel. So I've just wet this now down to the top of the mountains. And I want to start by just putting in some blue for these mountains, or for the sky rather. So I'm going to start with a little bit of this cyan blue, which is a very, very potent blue color, very beautiful blue color. While this paper is damp, it's still wet in a lot of places. I'm going to let some of the glisten get off of it a little bit. And I'm just going to touch in some sky, and we're going to paint around the clouds, which is a typical way for watercolorists to do. Up here we'll put in some blue, and come down to the top of the mountains, leave some space for clouds. In here I want to have some blue, maybe over here. Don't want to have square clouds. I just noticed I was getting a square cloud because I'm using a square brush actually, which kind of helps for those types of things, but I don't want square clouds, so I'm going to put just a touch of Crimson Lake in here to sort of give me a little more purplish color, and touch and change of color over here above these mountains, and just scrub in some interesting shapes, leave some places for clouds to float around. Down here I'm going to put in a little more of this crimson to lighten it up a little bit, or to redden it up a little bit, I should say. Not much more than that. I'm going to put a little bit in here. I'm going to have a big tree over here on the right. I can paint over that. But we'll just leave a few clouds here. Light change of color in this. And that's about it for the sky. Let's see how that looks on the video. It's probably too light, but you can always make painting darker when you're painting in watercolor. It's hard to make it lighter. You can, but it's a little more difficult. I want that to be, I may want a little bit darker, but I'm hesitant to go back and put another layer in there right now because I'll get runs and blossoms and all kinds of things that happen when you go back into a sky. Once you put a sky in, you should probably leave it alone and let it completely dry off and not mess with it too much. Because every brush stroke will do something to that paint and will change the texture or turn it to mud or something. So that's enough of that. Let's look at the mountains in the distance. I'm going to put, they have some green in them. I'm going to grab just a little yellow here and see if I can green up my blue that's on the palette. I'm putting some primary yellow in with this. And I don't want it to be that bright a green. I want to tone it down a little bit. So I'm going to put in a little yellow raw sienna here and see if I can tone it down a little bit. Maybe a little yellow ochre would do it. Yellow ochre is a little more opaque, and it will tone it down to a not as bright a green. If I want to get a little gray in there, I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna in there to gray it down. So the burnt sienna will give me a little gray. It will gray down this blue and gray down the green as well. So you can see I've got a couple of shades of green here in my palette along with the blues. So let's start with some of this in these mountains back here and see if I can get it while it's still. See, the trees that are going to go over this are going to be a darker green, a bluish green, because they're evergreen. So as long as this is sort of a lighter green in the background for this mountain here, it'll be okay. If I put in some ochre, it'll make it a little more yellow in some spots. Let's put in some of this here, like this. Here we go. Yeah. Change the color. Don't make this all one shade of green. So I'm painting around this tree here. It's going to have some nice shapes in this tree. They're going to be darker, so I'm not worried too much about it. Over the top of the cabin, just come down to the top of the cabin. Now I'm doing wet on dry paint, which I'm still using this big 1-inch brush. Over here, let me get a little more of this ochre in. I think I want a little more. Brown it up, change the color. Yeah, something like this. Here. So this comes down like that. I'm going to try to keep a very light area back here around this cabin on the ground. Make this come up into the sky, touch into the sky so we don't have white paper in there. A little more blue in it. Change the color again. Down like this. And then over here is going to be another big green pine tree on the right, so I'm not too worried about that color. I can always paint darker over it. Let me see down here. Well, down to the horizon line is down here, so I'm going to put a few streaks down here like this. We'll go over this again and it will sort of blend together, but I want to get a lot of this mountain in the background painted in. So you can see I've got this mountain start. I got some change of color. I've left some spots for some pine trees that are going to be in the foreground here, middle ground actually. And I just want to put a few more spots in here, darken it up in some areas, change the color. Don't keep it all the same. Nothing's more boring than a painting that's got one big splotch of green all the way across the back. You have to change these colors up. Okay, so that now in this area in the back under the and behind these trees, I'm going to try to keep that very light. See if I can even maybe make it like this. This is sort of going to be, this area right in here is going to be my center of interest. So I want to have some lights and I want to be able to put some nice darks over them. So we'll paint in a very light wash. I'm just using primary yellow now, sort of putting a light wash in here. Covering up some of these trees that are already there. We'll darken them up, but right now we're just going to kind of laying in some base color. This comes over this way and has some bushes that it goes around. There's actually another little darker color in here for the background trees. So that's getting the kind of lightness I want in there. And the ground here, I may even leave some white in this ground area back here. But I want to get a little bit different shade of some trees here in the middle ground distance, I guess you'd call it. I'm going to add a little ultra violet to my mixture here, and it's going to purple it up a little, I guess is the term. Getting just a little of this sort of brownish purple. And right in here I'm going to put in something that's maybe a little darker if I can get it right. I'll put a little blue in there maybe to make it. Has to stand out. It's got to be different color than what's there. Let's see what it looks like here. Just another sort of layer of trees back here. They're a little closer. Still don't have it dark enough. So it's sort of grayish in color. Blend that in down here. Okay, something like that. Looks like another layer of trees back there, hopefully, and I may want to come back and darken that up a little bit more. What's hanging out here on the side, this big area is going to be a big dark pine tree that goes up the side all the way to the top, and I'm going to have some dark pine trees over here that are narrower, but it's but that's what's going to sort of frame the painting. So I've got my sky in, I've got my background hills in, got a little middle ground tree here. or not tree, but some, it looks like a mountain actually, but it is supposed to represent some trees. So let me see if I can, it's still a little wet. You can always tell the wetness of your paper by putting the back of your hand on the paper, and if the paper feels cold, it's wet. If it feels like the temperature of your finger, it's dry. Always use the back of your hand, not the front of your hand, because you have oils on the front of your hand and you'll get oil on the paper or the paint. You don't want that, so always use the back to test the dryness or wetness of the paper. Okay, let's see. I'm still got this big old 1-inch brush. What else can I do while I've got this thing going? How about maybe the roof of this cabin? Let me see. How do I want to do this roof here? Okay, we're going to get some browns and some purples in here. It sort of has a light gray color in the original photograph. But I'm going to just see what happens here if I do this. Something like that. Change the color, put in some other changes here to modify it so we don't end up with the same identical color. I'm going to leave a room on the left side here for a big tree that's going to overlap. So I want to make sure I've got some of this color in there, and when I overlap that tree it will look proper. Okay, something like that. Still this big old 1-inch brush. Put in some spots and let it run. Since I'm vertical, this is going to run and make some nice graded little washes in there. Let's see this other side. I'm going to get a little darker color here from my neutral tint, or Payne's Gray, some might call it. Over here. Something like this, and put a little border on this edge. Something like that. Have something down here as well, but again, I can come back and touch that up, add some more colors later, but right now that's good for now. This drawing that I made of the cabin, I actually emphasized, excuse me, this little railing that's around. There's a deck on the front of this cabin, and it has a railing around the top. So let's see what we can do. I'm probably going to have to change brushes. My brush is getting a little bit too big for some of this. Before I do, maybe, let's see here, this area I want to keep this area really light behind this cabin here, because it's going to be the sort of the highlight. Let me see if I can put a little brighter yellow in here. That's brighter. Paint around this guy. And it's going to come down to somewhere like this. So we're going to have bushes and trees and rocks and all kind of stuff in here, but I want to get this light green layer in there. Okay, so that's a little different color than the color behind it. And under here it's going to be dark, so this is going to be dark, and it's going to have a nice background there to highlight with that yellow. All right, have I about done this big brush in? Let me go back and see if I can put a little bit more of these trees that represent trees back here. I'm going to use this violet color. See if I can maybe put in some tree. Look a little more like some evergreens or something standing up back here. Just along this ridge, there's another ridge of trees. Pushing up, down, change the color. There's some trees going to be in here. I'll leave some little openings for that. Okay, something like that. Left enough little openings that I can put a tree or two back there that will lay over that background. Okay. This other stuff in here. Okay, I'll just leave that alone for now. Okay, so we've got our colors repeated. Those are probably the wrong level. This should be a little higher or lower, just from a design standpoint, but I already got that roof in. I can't move the roof of the cabin. I can change the trees on the right slightly to sort of give me a shape that's got maybe more upward movement here. Yeah, something like this. Put in some vertical streaks like this. You always get things that look like pine trees or something by using a flat brush and tapping it vertically like this, perpendicular to the paper. Okay, there you go. So I've got some things that look like some nice little trees off there in the distance. That's a little better. Okay. All right. Blend a little together. Don't let it be all the same. Pick up some of this. If I keep going back over it, we'll just eventually get mud out of it, and I don't want to keep going back over it anymore, so I'm going to stop. Stop. Okay, so we're making good progress. We probably have a good, maybe half of this painting finished here. All right, I'm going to get rid of this big 1-inch brush and see if I can get myself a little bit smaller brushes now and start working on some of the details of this cabin. We're going to have some browns in this cabin. Most cabins are, a lot of cabins in Montana are log homes or log cabins, so they have a lot of brown in them and different colors of brown. They have moldy grass on the roof, some of them, but we're going to keep ours fairly bright. So let's see. The sun is actually coming in this particular painting. The sun's sort of coming from the top left corner, so anything in here is going to be dark in shadow. So let's just put some darks in there. That may not be dark enough, but we will continue to darken. I changed the color there slightly by adding a little bit of my purple to it. So I'm just painting around this door opening. Over here we're going to put a little more coming down. This cabin has very deep eaves. It's got like that eave is like about a 4-foot eave on it. So I'm trying to represent that accurately because this is a cabin that people know about. So I have to try to at least represent some reality here. And I'm going to paint this little area under the fence, between the fence, leaving room for the top. Okay, change the color a little bit. Let's get a little bit different color for the side. I'm going to add a little more of this lavender, be a little more darker on the left side around this window. Something like this. Over here, room for the tree. I've got a tree that's going to come in here, so I want to make sure I show that cabin between the leaves of this tree. Paint around another post here. Down. There we go, something like this. These little flat brushes are really great for doing architectural renderings. And that other color needs to be in here, if I can get it in there, like right here, to be as accurate as possible. Okay, so now you're starting to see that fence show up around that front of that cabin, this railing. Underneath, these posts and everything underneath are a lot darker color. And there's a lot of darkness in the bottom down here, so these are really in shade and shadow. I'm going to throw in some posts down here that are underneath the building, so they are definitely out of the shadow, in the shadow. They sort of pile into the ground, and they have rocks beneath them, so we'll be painting these rocks down here in a minute, but I can paint the tops of these to kind of indicate the rocks in some places. Okay, so now I've got some foundation holding that thing up. All right, see how this is. That's not totally dry. Let me paint the underside of this eave. This big eave here. I'm going to have a little bit of dark gray under it. Add some more purple to it maybe, liven it up. As I come down, I want to modify that color a little bit. I want to warm it up just slightly because it is getting some reflection from the water, from the ground, from the trees, and so it is slightly warmer at the bottom. So I have another graded wash here that goes from cool at the top to warmer at the bottom. And most buildings, if you look at them, you'll see that if you look closely. If there's any kind of sunlight around at all, you'll see that. So that kind of helps identify that. In here, let's see, maybe this window, I'm going to just pop in some darks for this window right now. Something like that. All right. Let's see, maybe I'm going to put a little more of this dark, sort of frame in this board that's on the front of this eave here. I'm not painting a solid line, if you'll notice. It's sort of hit and miss, leaving some whites and making the line a little crooked. Doesn't have to be perfect. Matter of fact, it's more artistically, looks better artistically, I should say, if it's not a straight solid line. Over here, the same thing. Let it run. See, that eave is a little wet still in some spots, so. All right, that'll do it for that. That may be a little too dark for there. All right, that's good. Okay. Now, how about some of these trees in the background? Should I get some of those in? Maybe I'll work on a few of these trees. We're going to need a lot of green. I'm going to pull out a little of my sap green here, and maybe even some cupric green. It has a lot more dark bluish green in it. I'm going to throw in a couple of blues. So the color I'm getting is quite a mixture here in this palette. These are transparent colors, and they will show what's underneath them. So I have to make sure if I want something on top, I want to make it fairly dark. But over here, If I just start in here with one of these pine trees here, sticking up, change the color, we come down, goes right off the paper up there. I'm just giving myself these little flicks with the brush. It's called dry brushing. If you can make the brush dry. And these really are very identical, but I don't want to make them exactly identical if I can keep from it. Put in some other colors. I'm throwing in some browns and some reds here. Let some of that Green Mountain show through. And just sort of scumbling here, I guess you'd call it. Getting some mixture of greens and blues and browns. Got some reds in there. Picking up the red, some of the reds from this burnt sienna. Put a little water in there to get something to paint on. It's sort of not running very well. I'm going to darken it up down here at the bottom because it needs to be darker, but I'm just going to put a light coat of this on here right now and come back and touch it up with some more details. Down at the bottom, this is like running into either some rocks or some other bushes. So we want to make some rough edge down here where it touches. This other tree is very similar, but it's got to have a different color. I want to make it so that it doesn't, you can definitely tell them apart. So you know you have more than one tree here pushing out. And just put some flicks with the side of the brush. Cover that roof. As long as it's darker, it will show up. Up here. Okay. So we're getting that cabin kind of nestled in behind these trees, which is what I want to show. So just a whole mixture of greens and threw some blues in there, and I have a little post here I want to paint around. Right there, something like that. Put some of this green over here, like that. I got some bushes down here that are going to have this color green in them. Got some rocks right there. Paint over the rocks. Okay, so hopefully that's starting to look a little bit like some big old tall pine trees that just stick up and dwarf this cabin. Put a few more marks in there. Leave a little sky, leave a little mountain behind there. Okay, change the color. So we've got those big old pine trees in there. I have several others across here that are similar types of trees. So I'm just gonna, while I got this going, I might as well just keep putting more in and keep painting across the background here. This particular photograph had a lot of these trees in it. I've taken some out for artistic interpretation, but they are very beautiful little trees, and if you can make them look right, you'll have a very nice looking painting here. Add some browns, change the color. They're tall and narrow, very skinny trees. We're here. I'm going to put some more darks on this right side. This is out of the shadow, or in the shadow, out of the sun, I should say. So I'm going to darken up some spots of these trees on the left side that I just finished. And connect some over here. It helps add three-dimensionality if you can get about 3 values in some of these objects like trees. A dark value, a mid value, and a light value. It'll help really make it look more three-dimensional. Hopefully this is looking like a, well, this is still wet. I want to put in maybe a scrape in with my back of my the back of these brushes have a little wedge edge on them, and you can actually use them to kind of scrape in some graffito type marks. Sgraffito it's called. Alright, what else? Let's see here if we can get some more ochre in maybe in these trees, or some more over here. Let's put in a little more brown. So many trees are getting destroyed by this infestation of bugs. Bug, I think it's a beetle of some sort that I forget exactly what it is, but there's something that's destroying a lot of these pine trees in Montana and all out west, actually, California, Colorado. So you see a lot of places where these things are just basically all brown and reddish brown. They're getting eaten up, destroyed by this bug. So let's put a few more things in here. Now this one touches the roof, but it actually goes below the roof, so we're going to show this one coming below the roof here, a little bit up there. Down below we're going to have just a few branches down here, not much, and we got this nice way to silhouette it against that background. And then we have dark trunks that sort of stick down out of that. We're doing over here. Let me see if I can put in some marks that look like maybe some trunks coming down here and there. You see these trunks just every so often. You don't see them sticking out everywhere, but you do see them. So again, it's not, don't make one big line right up the middle, otherwise it looks like it's you've drawn that trunk on, and we don't want people to think that. You can actually lift paint out if you get a thirsty brush. You can come in here and pick up some paint and make some light marks in there that will lift up the paint that's there and make it look like there's the trunk is lighter in color rather than darker in color. I messed this up. I'm getting a blossom there, but hey, that's what happens sometimes. All right. Couple of trees there. Let me keep going. I've got several trees over here that I want to whip in, so I'm going to come back and start just very quickly throwing in some more. Those kind of couple trees there just sort of stand alone. I'm going to make sort of more of a grouping of trees now over here, kind of connect these together so we have more than one tree, and not have them stand alone by themselves over here. We're going to sort of just scumble them together and look, have a grouping of trees, and we will show them by their trunks sticking out the bottom here in a minute. So you see here like this, get some more of this burnt sienna. So darken it up a little bit, redden it up maybe. Got some trees in like this. I'm just laying this brush down basically and letting it sort of push up like this. Getting these nice little fluffy, airy tops on the things, on these, by just pushing. See, okay, come through here. So this is just a big grouping of trees. I'm leaving some holes so you can see the mountain behind. Chance to overlap some of these on the other trees here to sort of connect them together so we don't have big gaps. Oh, let's see here. Okay. So one of the ideas of painting a grouping of trees like this is that if you make a blob of color that looks sort of green in color and looks like it would be trees, the viewer will believe what they are if you do the edges right. If you make these edges look like pine trees or the edges of branches sticking out, you will actually be telling the viewer what this is. So much of particularly watercolor, well, painting in general, whether it's watercolor or oils, is about what's at the edges. So if I make these edges look just right, that will tell you that this is some sort of a tree in there, and a grouping of trees. And what's in the middle is not all that important, as long as you believe there's trees, pine trees, and got some of these little branches hanging down. I'm going to put the trunks in a moment. But if I make these edges look right, you will believe those are a whole crop of pine trees in there. So I didn't spend a lot of time painting every tree. I just put groups together of brush strokes and tried to get it darker at the bottom, because the bottom is where any vertical tree like this is going to be darker in the bottom. So you want that to be evident, which says it's really standing up. So these little things are basically telling the viewer what's going on there. Inside we might have some trunks here and there, just so they match. Now down here we're going to actually put in a few trunks to sort of help identify what's going on there. This trunk is going to be over a rock. The rock's going to be underneath it. Some of these are going to hit further back in the landscape. This one here has some darkness on it. It's going to touch the top of this rail. So it needs to be dark here as well. Okay, so I could spend a lot of time here messing around with these, but the idea is to get them painted in and get out of it, leave them alone if you can. It's always want to go back and keep messing. One artist used to say fiddling. You always fiddle around, keep fiddling with it. He was an English artist, so that term is probably more appropriate in the UK than it might be in the US, but nevertheless, you can fiddle and mess around a lot here if you want. Even use the back of the brush again and put in some vertical strokes again. Don't do too much of this, you'll make it boring. Just like anything, if you overuse it, you'll make it boring. All right, so I have a stand of trees that you can see sitting over a nice light background there of the of the ground. All right, let me see. I had another tree. I didn't really finish. I got another, let me pop in another tree over here, like right in here somewhere. Yeah, there we go. I'll throw some things over here. Just scumbling again, using the brush, changing the color, flicking it out, making it look like there's stuff going on here. There's some bushes and some things below these that are in the foreground I want to sort of paint around if I can, if I remember. And pick up a few darks in here, like that. There's a lot of trees out here. So just take the brush and flick up. Okay. And you can even make some of these stick above because this adds interest to it. There are a lot of some dead branches and dead trees standing in here in some places. So just this big area here is really too plain. It needs to have something else in it. So I'm going to stick in a few more somethings out here to sort of fill in this space so we don't just have a big empty section that has nothing going on. I want this to put this up like this. Well, maybe put it a little above the mountain line. And we actually could connect this okay, something like that. Okay, don't want to make them too plain, kind of rub them out a little bit, make them so we have some interest in here that look like more than just stuck on pine trees in the foreground. All right, let me see what that looks like. Get back, step back, get away from it, take a look. It's looking better. All right. Over here, I think I'm just about done that in. I maybe put just a little more. Yeah, let's put a little more over here. Fill this space up a little bit. Okay. So this little flicking at the top, you can see that makes these things look like they're pine trees in the middle ground, which is what we're trying to indicate. These show where they are. Okay. Now, all right, we got more bushes and rocks and things down here. I'm going to change the color of this thing so we don't end up with too much green. Got a lot of green in this already. But in here we've got some other bushes that sort of stick up and kind of lay along this bank. There's a bank to this river. So I'm going to just put in some changes of color here. If I touch the bottom of those trees, you'll see that it sort of brings them into the ground. They actually become part of the ground now. I'm leaving room on top here for rocks. So I'm painting these lower bushes along here. And as I touch the bottom of the tree, it just sort of sucks the bottom of that tree in and makes it look like it's part of the landscape. It doesn't leave it hanging out there. I still have some that are hanging I may have to touch in a minute, but let's just get through some of this. This is a big green bush here. I'm going to make it go up and actually touch this guy. There we go. It's on top of a rock here, so I'm going to leave a sort of rough edge at the bottom so I can define that rock. We do have a few more green things down here that sort of go together. Get a little darker over here. So I'm just kind of changing the color, mixing it up so that it's not all one big green blob. I don't want green blobs. These are getting into shadow here, so I'm going to start painting in some darks under here like this. On the bottom edge, shadow, shadow, dark. Back in here it's really dark underneath. So we'll just keep it very dark. Yes. Okay, down here it's fairly dark. More of this neutral tint to darken it down a little bit. See if I can get a little darker in here. That's plenty dark. Whoa, too dark. Lighten it up. A little water. Got rocks and stuff going on down here, so I'm going to just rough brush it. Rough brush means take the brush with a little bit of water and you scrape it across this surface very quickly, and you end up with some nice rough texture. All right, step back, look at it. What's it looking like? Okay, we've gone over 50 minutes here on this already, so we're making good progress. You can definitely see these posts sticking out in here. You can see the dark underneath. I've variegated that darkness so it's not all one color. Maybe a little hard to see on the video, but up close this is definitely got some darks down here. All right, there we go. Inside this building in here, I'm going to leave that window so you can see that window in the back. But I'm going to put a little bit of a mixture of dark color in here around in here, if I can get the right size brush. Just paint around this window like this. Paint around the window, paint around the top of this post, down this side. Okay, could be a little darker, but we'll just leave it like that for now. Put some dark colors in there. Okay, that's highlighting that window. We'll put a little frame around that in after a bit. We've got this other big old tree over here, and we got our water. So I think for the water, I'm going to have to clean out some of this palette. I got way too much stuff in here, so I'm going to squirt it down with my big spray bottle and just wipe it out here. Give me some more working room. I don't want to lose all my greens, but I want to get rid of some of this stuff that's there. And we'll come back and put some other colors in there for this water. The water has to be sort of a lighter color. It needs to reflect the sky, so it's going to have some of the blues and the colors of the sky in it. This water back here is going to be, I don't know if I want to have a lot of wet in it or not, but I'm going to start with some. I'm going to get some of my blue, maybe a little ultra blue here, and put a little neutral tint in there to get some grays. Combination will give me some sort of a steely gray color here. Let's see what happens back here. I wet some of that, so you're seeing some bleeding going on, which is nice. Rough texture lets me make it look like there's ripples. Here's a rock right there. So I'm just sort of painting in this combination of blues and grays here, and as I take the brush and swipe it very quickly horizontally, I get these beautiful textures in the water. You don't just paint this thing as a big blue triangle. We're actually painting horizontally to make it look like we've got a lot of ripples and running water. This horizontal strokes like this very quickly with a semi-dry brush, just a little bit of water in the paint, and it really gives this nice look to it, nice feel to this water. And we probably will need to change the color a little bit. It needs to get a little bit darker as it comes toward us. Down here, a little bit darker than that maybe. We got rocks. We have some rocks that are actually under the water. I'll see if I can paint those after a bit. Make them look right. Here, darker blue. And if we put some darker streaks in here, we'll start showing some shadows. Helps it look like there's more than the glistening tops. We've got a little shadow under them so that they actually give them some three-dimensional shape as well. So that looks like a rough running stream pretty much. I got layers of rocks to put on here. I got this big tree to put on the right, and touch up our fence here around this deck fencing, and we'll have it mostly done, I think. All right. Over here, these have to touch the trees in this area, so I'm going to have this big old tree come out and lay out over this water. All right. Now these rocks, I'm going to get them some shade of brown or gray here. I don't know which. Maybe use a little my still to green brown with my ultra blue and see what color I get out of that. That's a nice color it looks like. Let's get some darker watercolors in here down toward the bank. I want this to look like it's touching the water. It's very dark. Some of these areas here. Not so dark over here, but it does have a little highlight on it. Change the color, add some purple. Something like this. Or still the green, warm it up. A lot of little rocks along here, a lot of them. Use the corner of the brush. Okay, there's a rock out here in the middle even. Okay, how's that looking? Somewhat realistic, yes. Okay, and some dark shadows under here. Get some more of this neutral tint to sort of darken up the bases. Flick up. I take the brush and just sort of flick up with it like that. It puts a nice little layer of dark under there that helps separate that, gives us another value in there. All along here there's some dark values where these rocks touch and stick out into the water. So we're trying to make an interesting edge along here so that we have some, it looks like rocks, a lot of them. We're here. We have some rocks over here. So, hit and miss, skip. Add some darks at the bottom, make it connect to the water. There we go, some darks out in here, darker shadows even than we have already. Some over here like this, just horizontal strokes. I haven't used a round brush all day. All I've used is my 1-inch flat and this 1/2-inch flat. And use your finger to blur it out a little bit, maybe give yourself some more rough texture. Over here, same thing. If you just grab that and pull it, you get some interesting textures out of it. How about over here? I don't know if it's still wet enough, but we can try it. Yeah. All right. That's that. This big old tree on the right. Actually, there's several bushes and trees and all kind of stuff over there on the right, but there's one big dominant tree that sticks out. And I'm going to try to see if I can pop it in very quickly. Put in some kind of clear water here to get some base to paint on. Very impressionistic up here. And come in with some darker colors. Not quite dark enough, but we'll get some more in there. Just push scumble right off the top of the canvas here. As we come down, it's got to get darker. Get some more blues in there. There we go. Stick it right out over the water. This doesn't have to be very explicit over here. This is sort of at the edge of the paper. You don't want people to spend a lot of time looking over there. So we're just leaving it very, very impressionistic. And you don't want to do much more than that. Put a few more textures in there to sort of make sure it's closed off on the edges, but primarily that might be it for that tree. Make sure that it sticks out and is darker than this stuff behind it right here, otherwise it won't show up. Connect some of the darks to the edges. Like that. Some good greens, good darks at this bottom here where it touches these rocks, make it stand out a little more. It's all soft, it's just all blending together in a really nice set of soft textures. All right, so that's that. The only thing I got left really is this around this building. These posts for this railing around the building. I don't want those to be real dark. I want them to be fairly light, so I'm just going to touch some ultra blue in there and see what happens here. Sort of a gray, gives it a and maybe change the color slightly to make it probably darken those up just a bit with maybe some browns in here. Picked up some green. Interesting. It's all right. Browns. There we go. Okay, it's highlighting those just enough. Actually, they're bleeding on me, which I didn't want, but because I painted that around it, and and I didn't let it dry. See, that's not a good idea there. Let's pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. There we go. We'll come back and touch it up and straighten it up in a minute. I don't want it bleeding into that gray color. Okay. Around this door opening, let's put in some browns of some kind. Darken it up a little bit if we can. There, that's better. Okay, some other shadows over here. Maybe put a few darks around this window. Emphasize this corner a little bit more. Darken this just a bit back here. All right. That shows there's a definite change in the plane of the building. What I want to do, I want to leave all these white spots out there. I may want to tone that down just a little in some spots, just very lightly cover these so they're not so gaudy. Tone them down just a little. I want the center of interest to sort of be in this area here, so I don't want to have a lot of other distractions with these whites. Sometimes the whites in the paper get to be a little too much, but they're still lighter in tone than the rest of it. Let me look here. I want to put another little bit of this. See if it's a little drier than it was. There we go. Those posts aren't gonna bleed on me now. All right. Fix that. All right. Okay. What else can I do to this? I think I've done about everything I can. I might put a few more, just some graffiti type marks in here. I had a couple trees I thought I would put in the background back here. Like right in this area here. I don't know if I can get them dark enough so you can see them. If not, they won't show up. But let me put in a few things like this. Put some other strokes in there. Get some, change the color. Some other trees in here that maybe look like there's some deciduous trees that are sort of hanging around in here. I'm using this very fine rigger brush, number 6 rigger. So it's got very fine point on it. It's good for this kind of detail. Probably hard for you to see that on the video because it's kind of dark on dark. But see, I'm gonna put a little line in this window. Outline it a little bit. Put in a few marks that look like there might be some boards in here or something, I don't know. Maybe a few things in the roof. Just touch it up a little bit. These little marks that have a lot of dry brush to them are typically look very nice on in paintings like this. Over here we might have a few more that stick out. Let me see if I can put a few more. Don't want to mess with this too much. I'll end up ruining it, but do want to have a few things that look like they're a little more interest in some of these areas that I've got a lot of open areas with nothing going on. put some in there. Back here I've got some, put a little break back here to sort of indicate there's a change in the landscape, so it's not all just one fuzzy color. There we go. It's a little better, I think. All right, I could mess with this for another hour, but I'm not going to. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, let you see some of the detail here, and take a look at that. And I'll back out and say, this is Larry Hamilton, wishing you happy painting. Keep it up and keep subscribing. I'll keep putting videos out, and thank you again for watching. See you soon. Bye.